I laughed when he found out the baby wasn't his. It wasn't a sound of amusement. It was the hysterical, splintering sound of a mind short-circuiting, the shriek of metal shearing as the life I had so meticulously constructed buckled on its foundations. Now, I am alone, raising a child in the quiet shame of my parents' house, while he has moved on. That is where this story ends. But let me tell you how I got here, because the path to ruin is paved with the most reasonable of intentions. My life with Landon was a masterpiece of curated perfection. We met at a boutique marketing firm where I managed social media campaigns crafting aspirational narratives for a living, and he was the quiet, brilliant data analyst who could find the story in the numbers. He was everything my mother had ever described in her prayers for me. Stable, kind, with a jawline that looked like it was carved from handsome granite and eyes the color of a calm sea. He owned his condo. He had a 5-year plan. He remembered I hated cilantro, and that I preferred the corner seat at our favorite cafe because of the way the afternoon light hit the table. Landon was safety. He was the warm, solid ground beneath my feet after years of navigating the treacherous terrain of men like Ryder. We fell in love quickly, a calm and steady current pulling us together. 6 months of dating led to a ring, and a year after that, a wedding straight from a Pinterest board I'd maintained since I was 16. For a while, it was perfect. It was the life I had advertised to the world, and for the first time, the product felt as good as the packaging. We bought a starter home in a neighborhood with good schools, he got a promotion, and we decided to start trying for a baby. Everything was aligning. The portrait was complete. Then the honeymoon phase, like all things golden, began to fade. Not into darkness, but into a comfortable, predictable gray. Landon started working late, chasing another promotion. The spontaneous notes left on the bathroom mirror were replaced by shared calendar invites. The passion settled into a quiet, companionable silence. I told myself this was maturity, the natural evolution of a lasting love. But a part of me, a dark and restless part I refused to acknowledge, felt a creeping sense of boredom. I felt like an actress who had perfected her role so well that she had forgotten who she was when the curtains fell. And that's when Ryder texted. "Hey stranger, in town for a few days. Coffee for old time's sake?" Ryder was complicated. He was the on-again, off-again chaos of my early 20s. A musician with restless hands and a smile that promised adventure and heartbreak in equal measure. He was the antithesis of Landon, unreliable, unpredictable, and utterly intoxicating. He would disappear for months, only to reappear with a story that was too wild to be true and an apology that was too charming to refuse. He was a bad habit I thought I had kicked. I told myself it was just coffee, closure, a harmless trip down a memory lane I had already paved over. I met him at a dimly lit bar, not a coffee shop, because that's the kind of subtle compromise that precedes a catastrophic one. He looked the same, the worn leather jacket, the untamed hair, the way he looked at me as if I was the only interesting thing in a bland world. He didn't ask about my perfect life or my perfect husband. He asked about the dreams I'd had before I'd settled for a mortgage. He made me feel seen, not as Landon's wife, but as Alara, the girl who once wanted to travel the world with nothing but a backpack and a camera. One coffee turned into drinks. Drinks turned into him leaning across the table and whispering, "I miss the mess we used to make." His apartment was just as I remembered it, a chaotic collection of instruments, half-finished canvases, and the lingering scent of whiskey and potential. And in that space, away from the clean lines and muted colors of the life I shared with Landon, I made my mess. It was a reckless, desperate act of self-sabotage, a betrayal born not of malice, but of a profound and selfish emptiness. I left before sunrise, slipping back into my perfect house like a thief. The guilt was a physical weight, a cold stone in my stomach. I showered, scrubbing his scent from my skin, and crawled into bed next to Landon's warm, sleeping form. He stirred, wrapping an arm around me without waking, and I felt a surge of love and revulsion so potent it made me dizzy. 2 weeks later, my period was late. I bought a test from a 24-hour pharmacy and took it in the sterile anonymity of a gas station bathroom. My hands trembled as I watched the 2 pink lines bloom into existence, stark and unforgiving. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through me. The timing was a blur of ovulation tracking with Landon and carelessness with Ryder. It was a mathematical impossibility. a Schrodinger's baby, simultaneously the product of love and betrayal. Sitting on that cracked linoleum floor, I did the mental gymnastics. I twisted the dates, stretched the timelines, and leaned into the comforting narrative. We had been trying. Landon and I were doing everything by the book. It had to be his. The alternative was a truth too destructive to contemplate. So, I made a choice. I would build my future on a foundation of hope, and I would bury the possibility of Ryder so deep it would never see the light of day. This baby, I decided, was Landon's, and I would make it true. That night, I told Landon. I orchestrated the moment with the precision of a campaign launch. I cooked his favorite meal, filet mignon with a red wine reduction, and set the table with the good china we never used. In a small, velvet-lined box, where a piece of jewelry might have been, I placed a pair of impossibly tiny white sneakers. He opened it, his brow furrowed in confusion, and then his eyes widened. He looked from the shoes to me, his gaze searching, hopeful. I just nodded, a single, deliberate movement, and watched as pure, unadulterated joy transformed his face. It was like watching the sun rise in his eyes. He lifted me off the floor, spinning me around in the kitchen, his laughter echoing in the space that suddenly felt sacred. "We're going to be parents," he whispered against my hair, his voice thick with emotion. "Alara, we're going to have a family." Oh. In that moment, watching the man I loved dissolve into happiness, the lie felt less like a sin and more like a gift. What he didn't know wouldn't hurt him. It would only bring him this perfect, untainted joy. The next morning, I blocked Ryder's number and deleted our entire message history. It was a digital exorcism. Wiping the slate clean was easier than confronting the ghost. Michael was stable, successful, and he wanted this family. He would be an amazing father. Ryder could barely hold down a job, let alone a child. It was better this way, I told myself, repeating the mantra until it felt like truth. Our baby would have the perfect life I'd always wanted for it. I was just really good at lying to myself. The first trimester was a masterclass in manipulation. I leaned into the role of the glowing, expectant mother with theatrical devotion. I posted weekly bump photos on Instagram, complete with captions about being so blessed and over the moon. Each like and gushing comment felt like another brick in the wall I was building around my secret. The more people who bought into our perfect story, the more real it felt. I threw myself into planning the nursery, dragging Landon to every baby boutique within a 50-mile radius. We debated the merits of different cribs, the softness of organic cotton onesies, and the perfect shade of sage green for the walls. Watching him get excited, his analytical mind applying itself to stroller safety ratings and car seat installation, soothed the jagged edges of my guilt. He would talk to my belly every night, telling our unborn child about his day, about the code he was writing, about the stars he would teach them to identify. Each sweet, earnest word was both a balm and a fresh wound. But the paranoia was a persistent hum beneath the surface. I'd wake at 3 a.m., my heart pounding, and compulsively check my period tracking app, trying to force the dates to align in a way that offered certainty. I'd stare at Landon's face as he slept, tracing the line of his nose, the curve of his lips, trying to will those features onto the child growing inside me. The more my body changed, the more my anxiety grew. I started dropping little comments into conversation, planting seeds of suggestion. "I have a feeling she'll have your eyes, Landon. He'll definitely get your height, thank God." I needed everyone to see him in this baby before it even arrived. The web of lies grew more complex. When Landon's mother, a sweet woman with an obsession for genealogy, asked for a detailed family medical history for both sides, I had to get creative. I invented distant cousins with allergies and fabricated stories about a great uncle's heart condition, praying she would never think to cross-reference them with Landon. Each lie required 3 more to support it, until I was living within a fragile narrative architecture I could barely keep straight. Pregnancy brain, I'd laugh, touching my temple whenever I contradicted myself. It became my go-to excuse for every inconsistency. I thought I was in the clear as we moved into the second trimester. Landon was so deeply invested, so completely in love with the idea of our family, that it seemed impossible for him to ever doubt it. His parents bought us a ridiculously expensive stroller, and his sister started planning a huge baby shower. The guilt began to recede, replaced by the warm, intoxicating glow of shared happiness. I could almost forget about Ryder. Almost. The first cracks in my perfect facade appeared not with a bang, but with a casual, well-meaning question. It happened at the baby shower. The living room was a sea of pastel pink and white, filled with the laughter of our friends and family. I sat on a chair that had been decorated like a throne, opening gifts, smiling until my cheeks ached. I felt safe, surrounded by the physical evidence of the life I had built. Landon's cousin, Corinne, a labor and delivery nurse with a sharp, inquisitive mind, sat down beside me. "You look amazing, Alara," she said, her smile genuine. "But you look a little small for being almost 30 weeks based on your announcement date. Are you sure they got your due date right?" The air in my lungs turned to ice. "Oh, I said, forcing a light laugh. "The doctor said I'm just carrying compactly, and maybe my initial timing was a week or two off. Pregnancy brain. She nodded, but her professional curiosity was piqued. "It's just that the fundal height seems a bit behind. And when you posted that 20-week ultrasound, the developmental markers seemed more aligned with 18 or 19 weeks. It's not a big deal, of course. Every pregnancy is different." My face flushed hot. I mumbled something about different ultrasound machines and changed the subject, but the damage was done. I saw it. I saw the moment Landon, who had been standing nearby, overheard the exchange. It wasn't a dramatic shift, just a subtle stillness, a flicker of concentration in his eyes, as he processed Corinne's words. It was the look he got at work when a dataset didn't add up, the look of a puzzle piece being clicked into place. He didn't say anything at the party. He was the perfect host, the doting husband-to-be. But that night, the comfortable silence between us felt different. It was heavy, charged with unspoken questions. I walked into our home office to find him on his laptop, not working, but scrolling back through my Instagram feed, his calendar open in another window. My heart hammered against my ribs. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice higher than I intended. He closed the laptop slowly. "Just looking at pictures from the shower." Corinne's comment got me thinking. It's funny how time gets blurry. The storm was coming. I could feel the pressure dropping. A few days later, the real tremor hit. Ryder, a ghost I thought I had successfully exorcised, started posting cryptic things on Twitter. Vague, philosophical musings about karma, about secrets always finding their way to the surface. "The truth has a funny way of demanding to be heard," one read. I couldn't block him. That would look suspicious if Landon ever found out we'd been in contact. So I had to sit there, watching these digital grenades being lobbed into my carefully curated world, wondering if he knew. Every phone notification made my stomach clench. Landon grew more distant, more observant. He started asking quiet, probing questions. "Hey, I was trying to pinpoint the exact week we conceived for the baby book. Was it the weekend we went hiking, or the week after?" Each question was a test, and I could feel myself failing, my fabricated timeline fraying at the edges. I'd blame my memory. I'd get defensive. I'd change the subject. But the seed of doubt that Corinne had planted was being watered by my own inconsistent answers. He was no longer just my loving husband. He was an analyst, and our life had become his problematic data set. The storm broke on a Tuesday night. I found him in the office again, but this time it was different. He had screenshots open on his screen, old social media posts of mine, calendar entries, text message logs from months ago. He had been quietly documenting things for weeks. Every time my story about the conception date had shifted slightly, every inconsistency, every lie I had told his mother about my family history that didn't quite match what I'd told him. It was an indictment laid out in pixels and timestamps. "Landon, what is this?" I asked, my voice cracking with practiced hurt. "Why are you acting so paranoid? Don't you trust me?" That was always my first line of defense, playing the victim. Usually, it was enough. The sight of my distress was enough to make him feel guilty and back down. But this time was different. He didn't look away. He just sat there, his face eerily calm. "Your story keeps changing, Alara," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "First it was mid-March. Then you told Corinne it was early April. The dates you told my mother for your last cycle don't align with what you told me." Panic flared, hot and acidic. I switched to anger. "I can't believe you're doing this. Interrogating me while I'm carrying your child. The stress isn't good for the baby. I let the tears come, the ultimate weapon in my arsenal. They had never failed me. He watched me cry, his expression unmoving. It was like trying to manipulate a statue. "Who is Ryder?" he asked. The name hit me like a physical blow. I gasped, a theatrical, wounded sound. "Ryder? That's ancient history. Why are you bringing him up now? Are you trying to hurt me? You're ruining what should be the happiest time of our lives with this insanity." "His name was on an old photo comment you forgot to delete," he said, still in that terrifyingly calm voice. "From March? I played my final card, the one I saved for emergencies." "If you really think I would do that to you," I sobbed, my voice trembling with manufactured pain, "then maybe you never really loved me at all." I even called his mother, crying hysterically about how her son was having a breakdown, making cruel accusations and stressing me out during my pregnancy. She took my side, of course, and called him, telling him to stop being ridiculous. For a fleeting moment, I thought I had won. Then he looked at me, his calm eyes seeing straight through the performance, right into the rotten core of my lies. He said the words that made my blood run cold. "I've already ordered a prenatal DNA test. The kit arrives tomorrow." I lost it. The facade crumbled completely, revealing the frantic, cornered animal beneath. I screamed at him, raw, guttural sounds of pure terror. I accused him of trying to kill our baby with unnecessary medical procedures. I threatened to leave him, to take the child and disappear where he'd never find us. I swore on my life, on our love, on the baby, that he was making the biggest mistake of his life. He didn't budge. For the first time since I'd known him, Landon was an immovable object. He just kept repeating the same calm, infuriating sentence. "If there's nothing to worry about, Alara, then the test shouldn't be a problem, right?" The test was happening. The game was over. I had run out of plays. The 2 weeks we waited for the results were the longest of my life. We lived like ghosts in our own home, moving through the motions of daily life in a thick, suffocating silence. I kept trying to act normal, to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. I'd make his coffee, ask about his day, rest his hand on my belly to feel the baby kick. He would comply, but his touch was mechanical, his eyes vacant. I was no longer his wife. I was a variable in an equation he was waiting to solve. The worst part was seeing his browser history. He forgot to close the tabs one night. "Signs your wife is lying about paternity. How accurate are non-invasive prenatal DNA tests? Emotional impact of paternity fraud." He was grieving a life that he wasn't even sure he had lost yet. The day the results were supposed to come, I woke up sick to my stomach, and it had nothing to do with the pregnancy. Landon had taken the day off work. He was sitting at the kitchen island, staring at his phone, when I came downstairs. He didn't look up. The silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. At 10:17 a.m., his phone buzzed with an email notification. The sound was as loud as a gunshot in the still air. We both flinched. He picked up the phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. My heart felt like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. I watched his face as he opened the email and read the attached file. I saw it happen in slow motion, the last vestiges of hope draining from his expression, replaced by a deep, cavernous devastation. His face didn't just fall, it crumbled. It was the face of a man watching his entire world burn down around him. And then, it happened. A sound bubbled up from my chest, a bizarre, involuntary reflex. A laugh. It wasn't a laugh of mirth or cruelty. It was the hysterical, broken sound of a pressure valve releasing, the sound of a mind snapping under a weight it could no longer bear. It was the sound of absolute ruin. That laugh changed everything. If there was any infinitesimal chance of salvaging anything, of finding a path through the wreckage, that single stupid sound obliterated it. Landon lifted his head, and the look in his eyes was one I had never seen before. It was a look of pure, unadulterated revulsion. He looked at me as if I were a complete stranger, a monster wearing his wife's face. "You're laughing," he said. His voice was a whisper, but it echoed like a scream in the silent kitchen. "Our marriage is a lie. Our child, my child, is a lie. And you're laughing." The sound broke the spell. Suddenly desperate to fix it, to undo that one terrible moment, the words just started pouring out. I told him everything about Ryder, about the timing, about how I'd convinced myself it had to be his. Each explanation sounded more pathetic, more selfish, more monstrous out loud than it had in my head. I chose you, I cried, as if that would make it better. I wanted you to be the father. You didn't choose me, he said, his voice hard as steel. You chose to lie to me, every single day for 8 months. You chose to let me fall in love with a child that isn't mine. You chose to make me look like a fool in front of our friends, our family, everyone. Oh, I started crying then, real tears this time, hot and useless. I tried to grab his arm, but he flinched away from me as if my touch had burned him. The next hour was a blur. He moved through the house with a methodical calm, packing a bag. I followed him from room to room, a desperate shadow, alternating between begging, apologizing, and getting angry. I pleaded with him about the bond he'd already formed with the baby. I threatened to tell everyone he'd abandoned his pregnant wife, that I'd ruin him. He just looked at me with those empty eyes and said, "You already have." The last thing he did before he left was walk to the living room wall. He didn't smash our wedding photo. He didn't tear it. He simply, carefully, unhooked it from the wall, placed it face down on the coffee table, and walked out the front door without a single look back. The click of the lock turning was the final sound of my old life ending. I stood there, alone in our perfect house, surrounded by sage green nursery walls and unassembled baby furniture, and realized I had been the architect of my own worst nightmare. In a moment of sheer, bottomless desperation that night, I texted Ryder. I told him about the baby. I thought, maybe, a sliver of me hoped, that he would step up. His response came within minutes. New phone, who dis? And then he blocked my number. Classic Ryder. I had thrown away a good man, a truly good man, for a ghost who couldn't even be bothered to acknowledge the existence of his own child. The divorce papers arrived with brutal efficiency. Landon's lawyer was methodical, presenting a documented timeline of my deception that made me look exactly as calculating and manipulative as I had been. There was no fighting it. I tried to play the victim card one last time, posting a vague, self-pitying status on Facebook about navigating unexpected life changes and staying strong for my little one. But Landon had already beaten me to it. He had quietly told his family and our closest friends the truth, with proof. The replies to my post were a smattering of confused emojis. Then, the unfollows began. Friends who had gushed over my bump photos now couldn't distance themselves fast enough. My own sister told me she needed space. I had to move back in with my parents when the lease on our house ended. My dad helped me move the nursery furniture into their spare room in near total silence. The disappointment in his eyes was worse than any anger could have been. 8 months have passed. My daughter, Willa, is 4 months old. She is beautiful, and she looks exactly like Ryder. She has his dark, unruly hair and his mischievous eyes. It is the universe's cruelest, most constant reminder of what I did. Every time a stranger coos over her and asks if she looks like her father, I have to decide which lie to tell. "He's not in the picture," is my usual pathetic understatement. I still check Landon's social media more than I should. It's a form of self-flagellation. He moved in with his brother, got a therapist, and got into the best shape of his life. His life, it seemed, was thriving without me. Last week, he posted pictures with a new girl. They were at a rooftop restaurant downtown, smiling. She's beautiful, of course, prettier than me. The kind of girl who looks like she doesn't have any secrets. His relationship status just went public. The comments are a flood of support. "So happy for you, Landon. You deserve all the happiness after what you've been through." I've become a cautionary tale in his heroic comeback story. Sometimes, in the dead of night, while I'm feeding Willa, I think about reaching out to him. To apologize again, now that the dust has settled. But what would I say? "Sorry I tried to trap you into raising another man's child and then laughed in your face when I got caught." There's no Hallmark card for that. The truly messed up part is that sometimes I still think that if he had just never asked for that DNA test, we could have been happy. We could have been that perfect family. Willa would have had a father who adored her, and Landon never would have known. Is it wrong that a part of me, a dark, stubborn part, still thinks that would have been better? My mom says I need therapy to work through my patterns of deception. She says I need to learn from this and grow. But no amount of therapy can change what happened, or make people forget what I did. Last night, I was scrolling through Landon's profile again. There was a picture of him and his new girlfriend hiking, bathed in golden afternoon light. He looked happy. Genuinely, weightlessly happy. And I felt a surge of hot, unadulterated anger. How dare he be happy without me? How ridiculous is that? I'm the one who set our life on fire, but seeing him walk away from the ashes unscathed makes me feel like I'm the one who got burned. Everyone says I need to take accountability, to stop playing the victim. They don't know what it's like to watch your life fall apart, even if you're the one holding the match. So yes, I laughed when he found out the baby wasn't his, and now I'm alone. I know I'm supposed to say I've learned some profound lesson about honesty, but the truth is, I mostly just learned that next time I need to be more careful about covering my tracks. Is that growth? Probably not, but at least I'm being honest about that much.